The stagecoach rattled to a halt in a cloud of dust as Olivia Fenton clutched her worn leather satchel, heart pounding with equal parts fear and hope. After 3 weeks of grueling travel from Boston to the frontier town of Redemption Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1876, she was finally about to meet the man who had answered her advertisement in the matrimonial news. Stepping down from the coach, Olivia smoothed her blue cotton traveling dress, the nicest one she owned. At 22, this was her last chance for a respectable life after her family's financial ruin following her father's death. The mining town sprawled before her, a collection of wooden buildings straddling the main street, with the majestic Rocky Mountains rising in the distance. "Miss Fenton?" A portly gentleman approached, his expensive suit and gold watch chain marking him as a man of means. "Gerald Pitman." "We've corresponded." Olivia offered a polite smile despite her exhaustion. "Mr. Pitman, a pleasure to finally meet you in person." Gerald's gaze traveled over her, his expression shifting from anticipation to clear disappointment. "You're smaller than I expected." "I believe I mentioned my height in my letters," Olivia replied, trying to keep her voice steady, "and older." He frowned, circling her like a horse at auction. "Your advertisement said you were 19. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "I'm 22, as I stated in our third exchange of letters." More townspeople gathered around, curious about the new arrival. Gerald's face had hardened into a mask of contempt. "This won't do at all." He shook his head. "I specifically requested a young, robust woman capable of bearing many children and managing a large household. You're practically a spinster and look as though a strong wind might carry you away." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Olivia felt as if she'd been slapped. After selling nearly everything she owned to make this journey, she stood humiliated in front of strangers, with nowhere to go and barely $5 to her name. "Mr. Pitman, I assure you I'm quite capable. Our arrangement is terminated," he announced loudly. "I won't be saddled with damaged goods. You can find your way back east or seek employment in one of the saloons." He turned on his heel, leaving Olivia standing alone in the dust. Tears threatened, but Olivia refused to let them fall. She'd survived worse than public humiliation. Somehow she would find a way forward. "That's mighty ungentlemanly behavior, Pitman," a deep voice called out. The crowd parted as a tall figure stepped forward. Olivia looked up to see a man with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. His worn leather vest and dusty boots marked him as a working man, not one of the town's merchants or mine owners. "Mind your business, Kincaid," Pitman sneered. "Unless you're in the market for a bride yourself." The stranger Kincaid studied Olivia for a long moment. Something in his gaze made her stand straighter despite her exhaustion. "As a matter of fact, I am." He stepped closer, removing his hat. "Miss, I apologize for my neighbor's poor manners. I'm Knox Kincaid. I run the Double K Ranch outside of town. If you're still looking for a husband, I'd be honored to offer myself as a candidate." Whispers erupted through the gathered crowd. Olivia stared at the man, bewildered by this unexpected turn of events. "Mr. Kincaid, while I appreciate your gallantry, I couldn't possibly. At least let me offer you a proper meal and a place to rest while you consider your options," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "No strings attached. You look about ready to collapse, and these vultures are enjoying the spectacle too much." Olivia glanced around at the staring faces, some sympathetic, others cruelly amused. Her alternatives were few and bleak. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid," she said finally. "I accept your hospitality." Knox nodded, then raised his voice. "For those interested, Miss Fenton has agreed to become my wife. The wedding will be in 2 weeks' time." He picked up her satchel, offered his arm, and added in a whisper, "Just play along for now. I promise you'll have choices once we're away from here." Stunned by his declaration but grateful for the rescue, Olivia took his arm. Gerald Pitman's face had turned an alarming shade of purple. "You'll regret this, Kincaid," he hissed as they passed. "She's clearly not wife material." Knox stopped, his eyes hardening. The only thing I regret is not recognizing what kind of man you are sooner, Pitman. A real gentleman honors his commitments. With that, he guided Olivia toward a sturdy wagon parked near the general store. As he helped her climb onto the seat, she caught a whiff of leather, pine, and honest sweat. Not unpleasant, just real. "Thank you," she said softly as he settled beside her and took up the reins. "But you should know I have no intention of marrying a stranger, no matter how kind." Knox's laugh surprised her, deep and genuine. "I didn't expect you would, Miss Fenton, but those people back there will leave you alone now, and you'll have time to figure out your next steps without pressure." As the wagon pulled away from town, Olivia studied her rescuer's profile. Knox Kincaid appeared to be around 30, with laugh lines at the corners of his eyes and a small scar near his right temple. His hands were calloused from work, and though his clothes were worn, they were clean. "Why would you help me?" she asked finally. Knox kept his eyes on the road. "My mother came west as a mail-order bride. Her intended took one look at her, decided her limp made her unsuitable, and abandoned her. If not for the kindness of strangers, I wouldn't be here." The simple honesty in his voice touched something in Olivia. "I'm sorry about your mother, don't be." "She found a good man, eventually my father. They had 20 happy years together before the fever took them both." He glanced at her. "What brought you all the way from Boston to marry a stranger?" Olivia looked down at her gloved hands. "My father died last year, leaving substantial debts. My mother passed when I was 12. I worked as a seamstress, but the wages weren't enough to live on, let alone pay off what was owed. The creditors were persistent, so you answered an advertisement. Several, actually. Mr. Pitman was the only one who sent train fare." She sighed. "I should have known it was too good to be true." He described himself as a businessman seeking companionship. In reality, he wanted a broodmare. Knox's jaw tightened. "Pitman owns the largest mine in the territory and half the businesses in town. He's buried 2 wives already, both young women who died in childbirth." A chill ran through Olivia despite the warm afternoon. "Perhaps I had a fortunate escape then." "Indeed you did, Miss Fenton." They rode in companionable silence as the wagon left the main road, following a narrower track that wound through stands of pine and aspen. After about an hour, they crested a rise, and Olivia caught her breath at the view. A valley spread before them, emerald green with spring grass. A creek meandered through it, and in the center stood a sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch. Several outbuildings and corrals completed the picture, with cattle grazing on the distant hillsides. "Welcome to the Double K," Knox said, a note of pride in his voice. "It's not much compared to what you're used to in Boston, but it's mine, free and clear." "It's beautiful," Olivia said sincerely. "No sooty factories, no crowded tenements, just open space and clean air." Something tight in her chest loosened for the first time in months. As they approached the ranch house, a middle-aged woman emerged onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She peered at them with undisguised curiosity. "That's Mrs. Abernathy," Knox explained. "She comes in 3 days a week to cook and clean. Her husband works as my foreman." He helped Olivia down from the wagon. "Mrs. Abernathy, this is Miss Olivia Fenton. She'll be staying with us for a while." The housekeeper's eyebrows rose, but she merely nodded. "I've prepared the guest room, Mr. Kincaid. Supper will be ready in an hour." "Thank you." He turned to Olivia. "I'll show you where you can rest and freshen up." The interior of the house surprised Olivia. She'd expected a bachelor's sparse accommodations, but found a well-appointed home with solid furniture, colorful woven rugs, and bookshelves lining one wall of the sitting room. "My mother's influence," Knox said, noticing her interest in the books. "She was a schoolteacher before she came west. Education was important to her." He led her upstairs to a pleasant room with a brass bed, a washstand, and windows overlooking the valley. "Take your time settling in. Mrs. Abernathy's cooking is worth waiting for." When he'd gone, Olivia sank onto the edge of the bed, trying to make sense of her situation. That morning, she'd been preparing to meet her future husband. Now she was a guest in a stranger's home with no money and no clear path forward. Yet somehow she felt safer than she had in months. After washing away the dust of travel and changing into her second-best dress, Olivia made her way downstairs. She found Knox in the sitting room reading a newspaper. "Feel better?" he asked, setting aside his paper. "Much, thank you." She hesitated. "Mr. Kincaid, I appreciate your kindness, but I need to understand what happens next. I can't impose on you indefinitely." Knox gestured for her to sit. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need." The town of Silver Creek is about 10 miles south, smaller than Redemption Creek, but friendly. They need a teacher for their school. With your education, you might consider applying. Olivia blinked in surprise. "How did you know I have teaching experience?" "You mentioned being a seamstress, but you speak like an educated woman. It was a guess." He smiled slightly. "Was I right? I taught at a girls' school for 2 years before my father's death. The position didn't pay enough to cover his debts." She twisted her hands in her lap. "A teaching position would be ideal, but I have nothing to offer for room and board until I receive my first wages. You can stay here and help Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks in exchange. The ride to Silver Creek isn't too arduous." His expression turned serious. "Miss Fenton, I want to be clear, I meant what I said about having choices. The announcement of our engagement was merely to spare you public embarrassment and give Pitman no reason to harass you." Relief and something like disappointment mingled in Olivia's chest. "I understand, and I'm grateful." Mrs. Abernathy appeared in the doorway. "Supper's ready." Over a meal of roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, Olivia learned more about Knox and his ranch. He'd built it from almost nothing after his parents died, starting with just a few head of cattle and expanding through hard work and smart breeding. "You manage all this alone?" she asked. "I have 4 ranch hands besides Mr. Abernathy. Good men, they live in the bunkhouse near the barn." He refilled her water glass. "During roundup and branding, I hire extra help." As Mrs. Abernathy served apple pie, Knox turned the conversation to Olivia. "Tell me about Boston. I've never been east of the Mississippi." Olivia described her childhood in the city, her education, and her brief teaching career. She found herself speaking more freely than she had in years, encouraged by Knox's genuine interest. "It sounds like teaching suits you," he said when she finished. "The Silver Creek School isn't fancy, but the children deserve a good education. I'll inquire about the position tomorrow if you're willing to take me, of course." After supper, they returned to the sitting room. Knox built a small fire to ward off the evening chill, then selected a book from the shelf. "My mother's favorite," he said, handing it to Olivia. "Wordsworth's poems. She read them to me on winter evenings." Olivia ran her fingers over the worn leather binding. "My father loved Wordsworth too. He said the poems reminded him of simpler times." As darkness fell, she found herself growing comfortable in this stranger's home, drawn to his quiet strength and unexpected kindness. Yet she reminded herself that this was temporary, a reprieve, not a future. The next morning, Knox drove Olivia to Silver Creek in his wagon. The small town consisted of a church, a schoolhouse, a general store, and a scattering of homes. "It's not much," Knox said apologetically, "but the people are decent." The school board members, the storekeeper, the minister, and a rancher's wife interviewed Olivia on the spot. Impressed by her credentials and desperate for a teacher, they offered her the position immediately. "We can pay $15 a month," Mrs. Peterson, the rancher's wife, explained. "Not much, I know, but we provide a small cabin behind the school for the teacher's use." "When would you need me to start?" Olivia asked. "As soon as possible. The children have been without proper schooling for 2 months." Knox, who had been waiting outside, looked pleased when Olivia told him the news. "Congratulations, Miss Fenton. Silver Creek is gaining an excellent teacher." On the ride back to the ranch, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "I can't thank you enough, Mr. Kincaid. You've given me a chance at a new beginning." "You earned it yourself," he replied. "I just provided transportation." Over the next week, Olivia settled into a routine at the Double K. She helped Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks, prepared lesson plans for her new students, and explored the ranch property. In the evenings, she and Knox would often sit on the porch, discussing books or sharing stories. She learned that he'd fought briefly in the Civil War despite being only 16, had prospected for gold in Colorado without success, and had worked cattle drives before settling down to build his ranch. In turn, she told him about her dreams of traveling to Europe, her love of teaching, and her fears for the future. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the mountains. Knox considered the question. "Sometimes. But I have good neighbors, loyal hands, and work that matters. That's more than many can claim. But no family of your own. Not yet." His eyes met hers briefly. "The right woman hasn't come along, or perhaps she has and the timing wasn't right." Something in his tone made Olivia's heart beat faster. She looked away, suddenly conscious of how comfortable she'd become in his presence. The day before Olivia was to move to her cabin in Silver Creek, a visitor arrived at the Double K. Olivia was hanging laundry when she heard raised voices from the front of the house. Rounding the corner, she found Gerald Pitman confronting Knox in the yard. "I won't stand for this public humiliation, Kincaid," Pitman was saying, his face flushed with anger. "First you undercut my timber contract with the mine, and now you steal my bride." Knox stood calmly, arms crossed. "Miss Fenton was never yours to begin with, Pitman. You rejected her, remember, in front of half the town. She arrived under false pretenses. I paid good money for that train ticket, which I'll gladly reimburse," Knox replied. "How much was it? $50? 60? Pitman's eyes narrowed when he spotted Olivia. "There she is now, playing house with you already, I see, Mr. Pitman," Olivia said, stepping forward. "I fulfilled my part of our agreement by traveling to Wyoming. You chose to terminate the arrangement upon my arrival. I believe that concludes our business." "Not quite." Pitman's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You see, I've reconsidered. I'm willing to honor our original agreement despite your shortcomings." Knox moved to stand beside Olivia. "She's not interested. I believe the lady can speak for herself." Pitman turned to Olivia. "Consider your options carefully. As my wife, you'll want for nothing. The finest house in town, servants, beautiful clothes. What can he offer you? A life of drudgery on a cattle ranch that's one bad winter away from bankruptcy." Olivia felt Knox stiffen beside her. "Is that true?" she asked him quietly. "Times have been lean," Knox admitted, "but the ranch isn't in danger." Pitman laughed. "That's not what the bank says. I had a very illuminating conversation with Mr. Harrison yesterday. You had no right. I have every right to protect my investments. Silver Creek Mine needs reliable timber suppliers, not ranchers playing at being lumberjacks." Pitman turned back to Olivia. "He didn't tell you, did he? Your gallant rescuer is about to lose everything. The bank's calling in his loans next month." Olivia looked at Knox, seeing the truth in his tightened jaw and clenched fists. "Mr. Pitman, I appreciate your reconsideration, but my answer is no. I've accepted a teaching position in Silver Creek." "A teacher," Pitman sneered. "Living alone in that shabby little cabin? How long before desperation drives you to the saloon, I wonder? No respectable woman survives out here without a husband's protection." "That's enough," Knox said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Get off my property, Pitman." The mine owner adjusted his hat. "Very well, but remember my offer, Miss Fenton. It won't remain open indefinitely." He mounted his horse and rode away, leaving a tense silence in his wake. "Is it true?" Olivia asked when Pitman was out of sight. "About the bank." Knox ran a hand through his hair. "Not entirely. I've had a lean year, and yes, I have loans coming due, but I've been negotiating with the bank for an extension." He looked at her directly. "I didn't want to burden you with my problems." "I thought we were becoming friends." "We are," he hesitated. "I didn't want you to feel obligated to stay because of my financial troubles. You deserve a fresh start without complications." Olivia felt a rush of affection for this proud, honorable man. Friends share burdens, Mr. Kincaid. That's what makes them friends. The next day, Knox drove Olivia to Silver Creek to settle into her new home. The cabin was small but clean, with a bedroom, a sitting area with a small stove, and a tiny kitchen. "It's perfect," Olivia declared. Though in truth it was barely larger than her bedroom in Boston had been. Knox carried in her satchel and a box of supplies Mrs. Abernathy had packed: preserves, flour, coffee, and other necessities. "School starts tomorrow?" he asked, lingering by the door. "Yes, 22 students, ages 6 to 16. Olivia smiled nervously. "I hope I'm ready. You'll be wonderful." Knox hesitated. "I'll come by in a few days to see how you're settling in, if that's all right." "I'd like that." After he left, Olivia sat on her narrow bed, feeling strangely bereft. For a week, she'd grown accustomed to Knox's presence, his deep voice, his quiet laughter, the way he listened attentively when she spoke. Now, facing her first night alone in the cabin, she realized how quickly he'd become important to her. The following weeks passed in a blur of activity. Olivia threw herself into teaching, delighted by her students' eagerness to learn despite their varied backgrounds and abilities. The town welcomed her warmly, inviting her to Sunday socials and community gatherings. True to his word, Knox visited regularly, bringing fresh vegetables from his garden or a book he thought she might enjoy. Sometimes they would simply sit on her small porch, talking until the stars emerged. Olivia found herself looking forward to these visits with increasing anticipation. She told herself it was merely the pleasure of adult conversation after days spent with children, but in quiet moments, she admitted the truth. She was falling in love with Knox Kincaid. One Saturday afternoon in late May, Knox arrived unexpectedly, his expression serious. "I need to talk to you," he said without preamble. "Can you come for a ride?" Concerned by his demeanor, Olivia quickly agreed. They rode in his wagon to a ridge overlooking the valley, where wildflowers carpeted the ground in a riot of colors. "What's troubling you?" she asked as they walked among the blooms. Knox took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position managing a cattle operation in Montana. Good pay, a house provided, and a share in future profits." Olivia felt as if the ground had dropped away beneath her feet. "You're leaving?" "I'm considering it." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "The bank has officially declined to extend my loans. I have until the end of June to pay in full or forfeit the ranch." "Oh, Knox." She instinctively used his first name. "How much do you need?" "More than I can raise by selling cattle. My only option would be to sell the ranch itself." "To Pitman," Olivia guessed. Knox nodded grimly. "He's made an offer well below market value, of course, but enough to clear my debts and have something left over. The alternative is to walk away with nothing." "That's why you're considering Montana?" "Yes." He finally looked at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "But there's another factor complicating my decision." "What's that?" "You." He took her hands in his. "Olivia, these past weeks, getting to know you has been the brightest spot in my life. I find myself thinking about you constantly, wanting to share every sunset, every thought, every dream with you." Her heart pounded against her ribs. "Knox, I know it's too soon. We've known each other barely a month, but I can't make this decision without telling you how I feel." He squeezed her hands gently. "I'm falling in love with you, Olivia Fenton." Joy flooded through her, followed quickly by confusion. "If you feel that way, why are you considering leaving?" "Because I have nothing to offer you right now. I'll lose the ranch either way. In Montana, at least I'd have steady employment, a chance to save money and eventually start over." Olivia pulled her hands free, suddenly angry. "So you're making this decision without me, after telling me you love me? I'm telling you so you understand why I have to go." "No." She shook her head firmly. "That's not good enough, Knox. If you truly care for me, we face this together. I can't ask you to give up the security you've found. You're not asking, I'm offering." She stepped closer. "Do you know why I became a mail-order bride? Not just because of my father's debts, but because I was lonely. I wanted to belong to someone, to build a life with a partner who valued me." She touched his face gently. "I've found that person, Knox, it's you." Knox closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "Olivia, you deserve better than a man who can't even keep a roof over your head. What I deserve is to make my own choices, and I choose you." She smiled through tears. "Besides, I have a job and a cabin. Perhaps it's time for a man to be supported by a woman for a change." A surprised laugh escaped him. "What would people say? Let them talk. We'll figure this out together." Knox pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. "I don't want to be a burden to you." "You're not a burden. You're the man I love." The words felt right, natural, as if she'd been waiting her whole life to say them. He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that deepened when she responded eagerly. When they finally parted, both breathless, Knox rested his forehead against hers. "I still don't know how to save the ranch." "Then we'll save what matters most each other." That evening, as they sat on Olivia's porch watching the sunset, an idea began to form in her mind. By the time Knox left for the night with a promise to return the next day, her plan was taking shape. Sunday morning found Olivia knocking on the minister's door before church services. After a long conversation, she made her way to the general store, then to several homes throughout Silver Creek. By afternoon, she was ready. Knox arrived as promised, surprised to find Olivia dressed in her finest clothes. "Are we going somewhere?" he asked. "Yes, to town." She handed him a piece of paper. "Read this." Knox unfolded the paper, his expression changing from confusion to disbelief as he read. "Olivia, what is this?" "A solution." She took his hands. "The people of Silver Creek are offering to invest in the Double K Ranch as a community enterprise. You maintain controlling interest and full management, but they become shareholders, entitled to a percentage of profits once the ranch is stable again." Why would they do this? Because they need the jobs your ranch provides, because they're tired of Pitman controlling everything in the county, because they believe in you. She squeezed his hands. "I spent all day gathering pledges. Combined with my savings, we have enough to pay off the bank and keep the ranch running until fall roundup." Knox stared at the list of names and amounts. "I can't accept this. It's too much. It's not charity. It's an investment in their future as much as yours." She stepped closer. "Knox, these people need a victory against Pitman as much as you do. Let them help." He shook his head, overwhelmed. "And your savings, Olivia, that's your security." "I'm investing in our future." She took a deep breath. "That is, if you still want a future with me." Knox pulled her into his arms, "More than anything. Then say yes on one condition." He drew back slightly, his eyes serious. "Marry me, Olivia, not as part of some business arrangement, but because we belong together." Joy bubbled up inside her. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married the following Sunday in Silver Creek's small church, with the entire town in attendance. Olivia wore a simple white dress sewn by Mrs. Abernathy, and Knox stood tall in a new black suit. As they exchanged vows, Olivia thought of how far she'd come from that humiliating moment in Redemption Creek. The community celebration afterward lasted well into the evening, with food, music, and dancing under the stars. As Olivia and Knox swayed together, his arms strong around her waist, she leaned up to whisper in his ear, "Thank you for claiming me that day." Knox smiled down at her, his eyes filled with love. "Best decision I ever made. Even better than accepting the town's investment offer." "That was your decision, Mrs. Kincaid." He kissed her lightly. "You saved the ranch. You saved me." "We saved each other," she corrected, resting her head against his chest. As the music played on, Olivia reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. She'd come west seeking security through marriage to a stranger, only to find true love in the most unexpected way. What had begun as a desperate gamble had transformed into the greatest blessing of her life. The following morning, as they sat on the porch of the Double K Ranch, now officially their home, Olivia spotted a familiar figure riding toward town on the distant road. "Is that Pitman?" she asked, squinting against the morning sun. Knox nodded. "Heading to the bank, I imagine, to discover his plans have been thwarted." Do you think he'll cause more trouble? Probably. Knox took her hand, running his thumb across her wedding ring, but we'll face it together. The ranch is secure, the town is behind us, and most importantly, he kissed her palm. I have you by my side. Olivia leaned against her husband's shoulder, contentment washing through her. 6 weeks ago, she'd arrived in Wyoming territory, a desperate woman with few options. Now she had a home, a community, a purpose, and a love deeper than she'd ever imagined possible. No regrets, Knox asked softly. Olivia smiled up at him. Not a single one. As the summer sun rose higher in the sky, casting its golden light across the valley they now shared, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she'd finally found where she belonged. Not as a mail-order bride claimed out of pity, but as a woman chosen for herself, cherished for her strength and spirit. In this wild, beautiful country, alongside this good man, she had found her true home at last.